Have you ever wondered about the strangest photos that time has forgotten? Today we will reveal to you the strangest and most fascinating vintage photos that you will love. I promise you, they are truly rare and interesting. Enjoy the show. Classic behind-the-scenes shot of Cybill Shepherd and Martin Scorsese on the set of Taxi Driver, 1976. Cybill is holding an ice cream cone and Scorsese is holding an umbrella for her, a casual 70s vibe. It's not a project. Taxi Driver explored themes of isolation and mental health, with Robert De Niro playing troubled Vietnam veteran Travis Bickle. Photo by Jayne for Harper's Bazaar, October 1939. A Schiaparelli cape model under an umbrella on the Place de l'Opéra in Paris. The image was taken shortly before World War II, which gives it historical depth and a melancholy touch. Two passing sailors add romance to the rainy and melancholy scene on a Parisian street. Jack Nicholson relaxes on the set of The Shining, 1980. Jack, covered in snow but looking relaxed, is taking a break from filming one of the most iconic horror movies ever made. The Shining was a movie that required the ultimate effort from Nicholson. Tense scenes and endless takes on director Stanley Kubrick. But here he is, Jack, unfazed and unharmed, even in this blizzard. This photograph, taken between 1900 and 1910, captures a Cuban tradition. A hired reader or lecturer read cigars to the craftsmen in the factory. The lecturer read newspapers, novels, and political literature to keep the workers occupied during the long hours of work. This custom boosted morale and spread new ideas as workers absorbed news and literature while working. The 1920s monocycle, wild vintage machinery. This was an experimental one-wheeled marvel in which the driver sat inside the wheel, steering it and balancing it while the wheel moved around him. It looks cool, but monocycles were unstable and difficult to control at high speeds. They never became popular, but remained a bold design element that matched the free spirit of early transportation history. A New Year's Eve party from the 1920s. One lady stands at a flapper-style table and pours champagne with a wide smile. The roaring 20s were all about breaking social conventions, and this photo captures that carefree spirit. You can feel the jazz, big clothes, and fun of the era, which included party hats and vintage dresses. A salute to the past. A creepy photo from 1935 that shows early, somewhat bizarre attempts to study the brain. One man stands on a machine with a large metal helmet on his head while a scientist watches him closely. At the time, researchers were trying to figure out how the brain was organized, sometimes using experimental devices that were quite disturbing by our standards. What this machine actually measured is unclear, but it provides an eerie insight into early neuroscience experiments. The photo shows Hamburg police surgeon Ernst Müller in a sidecar with his black Alsatian police dog Astor. This mid-20th century photo shows how officers and their K9 partners bonded with each other in the good old days. With Astor by their side, they could patrol city streets together. It's more than a means of transportation. A great shot of a time when even police officers were stylish. A 1964 photo of Alfred Hitchcock parodying Ringo Starr. A dark humorist by nature, Hitchcock played it light at the height of Beatlemania, probably mocking the Beatles. Hitchcock pokes fun at Ringo's hair and sits behind a drum kit. It's a rare light-hearted moment from the master of suspense that shows that even he couldn't help but join in the cultural frenzy of the 60s. Photo from 1965, inside a pristine Safeway supermarket, cashiers and staff line up to serve customers. It's like a time capsule of mid-60s retail culture. Neat, spotless aisles and impeccable employee uniforms. That supermarkets would stock large quantities of goods under one roof was new then. This image demonstrates the efficiency and optimism of that era, when shopping became an American tradition. Nixon speaks at a campaign rally in July 1968 in Paoli, Pennsylvania. Nixon waves both arms in his signature V for victory gesture to applause. In the 1968 election, American history was split over the Vietnam War and social unrest. Nixon ran on a law and order slogan that many Americans found appealing. This photo shows the frenetic energy and support he received when he ran for president. A beautiful 1897 photo of the Venice Canal without the crowds of today. The quiet water and empty gondolas create an atmosphere of pure tranquility. A look at Venice as it was more than a century ago, calm, mysterious, and atmospheric. The soft light and faded tones give the shot a dreamy feel, as if you're transported to an era when Venice was more intimate. Shot by Jayne Mansfield in the 1960s at her home in Los Angeles. Walking up a staircase lined with framed magazine covers, many of which feature her, Jayne is as radiant as ever. Mansfield had a bold style and vibrant personality, so she decorated her home with mementos related to her career. This intimate yet classy photo reflects her 60s Hollywood charm and confidence. This is the last known photograph of the ship Titanic before its sinking in 1912. The photo was taken during the ship's maiden voyage as it set sail from Queenstown, Ireland. For its time, the Titanic was a true engineering feat, the epitome of luxury and human ambition. However, just days after this photograph was taken, the ship collided with an iceberg and sank in the North Atlantic, claiming the lives of more than 1,500 people. A stark reminder of the gap between human achievement and the power of nature. A young Dolly Parton in the late 60s. When Dolly first rose to fame, she had already made a splash with her unique looks and powerful voice. For at least a decade, she was a country music sensation and an everyday person. This photo gives a glimpse of Dolly before she became an icon, the humble beginnings and determination that defined her career. A pretty photo of Norma Jean, the future Marilyn Monroe, taken in 1945. The photo was taken before her Hollywood transformation. Young Norma with a carefree smile is a far cry from the glamorous icon she would become. The warmth in her facial expression and casual winter clothes give us a rare and lovely window into her early life before fame made her famous. In this 1939 photograph, a milkman delivers a letter to Streatham Grammar School in London. Bottles and crates, he is carrying fresh milk, which was a staple food at the time. A milkman in a traditional uniform with a wrap to protect him from the cold. This was life for the British before the Second World War. A photo from a time when home delivery was commonplace. These portraits show popular 19th century men's hairstyles. From sleek side-swept haircuts to perfectly styled curls and mutton chop sideburns, each image reflects the class and precision of the time. Some men of the 1800s groomed themselves with pomades and oils to make sure every strand stayed in place. These hairstyles speak of sophistication and social status, and that Victorian men took pride in their appearance. A young Hans Zimmer with a huge Moog modular synthesizer in 1970. Zimmer became one of Hollywood's most famous composers after he became familiar with the sounds of synthesizers like this one. The Moog modular was complex and intimidating, but it allowed Zimmer to experiment with the groundbreaking sounds of the time. One early photograph shows the musical genius standing next to a machine that would later become the defining machine for movie scores. A 1942 photo shows a worker in the New York Times composing room assembling the sports page by hand. By hand, he arranges details such as type blocks and images to give the final layout for printing. Before digital layouts, newspaper composition was precise and laborious. Here is an image from the physical art of newspaper production, the process that brought the news to life for millions of readers each day. See a 1974 lunch date with Mel Brooks and the Young Frankenstein cast. Brooks, a comedic genius, directed the film with his trademark mixture of humor and nod to classic horror. Sitting at the table are Peter Boyle as the monster, Marty Feldman as Igor, Gene Wilder as Dr. Frankenstein, Terry Garr as Ingda, and Cloris Leachman as Fro Blucher. This photo documents the off-screen chemistry that made Young Frankenstein a perennial comedy classic. One could practically sense the laughs and camaraderie that made this movie possible. Here Albert Einstein is seen on his porch in unusual furry slippers. His quirky personality and disregard for formality meant Einstein often chose comfort over style. Image of the famous physicist contrasted with his abrasive intellect. In his quiet moments too, Einstein reminds us that genius doesn't necessarily reside in a lab coat or slippers on the floor. A young Kamala Harris in the 1980s shows her short curly hair and high-collared coat with confidence and style. Even before her historic climb to the vice presidency, Harris was making a statement with her bold look. This image represents the spirit of a young woman facing the world, a glimpse of the strength and determination that would define her political career decades later. This 1937 photo shows two men on a deserted road in California during the Great Depression. They pass a billboard that says, "Next time try the train. Relax." An ironic message given their circumstance. People then traveled on foot or hitchhiked for work and opportunity. Its juxtaposition with the reality these men faced demonstrates the struggles of the era, how advertising idealized itself against the hard lives of everyday Americans. This 1948 invention is a soup cooling spoon for cooling hot soup. A small fan attached to the handle allowed diners to blow cool air over each spoonful before drinking. Today they are funny inventions that show the inventiveness and resourcefulness of post-war designers trying to make everyday life a little easier. It's a reminder that even the simplest tasks have inspired some seriously weird gadgets. This past invention is a feet brush for multitasking homemakers. A housewife with brushes on her feet can sweep the floor while reading. When efficiency was a major concern in household chores, such inventions provided creative and sometimes funny solutions. As amusing as it is now, the feet brush is proof that folks did go to great lengths to make cleaning a little more amusing and productive. This 1966 photo shoot shoot for Vogue features Audrey Hepburn with her hair down, literally showing a more playful side of her iconic beauty. Long, flowing hair was a departure from her classic short hair in films like Breakfast at Tiffany's, and it showed Audrey's versatility and timeless style. She is a style icon in a shimmering gown whose radiant smile and graceful pose make this image memorable. Here's a 1964 photo of Clint Eastwood skateboarding through Rome streets. Known for tough, serious roles in westerns and action films, this image shows a more laid-back Eastwood having fun in the Eternal City. Skateboarding in a suit isn't the norm, but Clint rocks it with attitude and that 60s carefree spirit. This is a reminder that even tough guy icons know how to relax. Cary Grant in a wild costume from Alice in Wonderland, 1933. Earlier in his career, Grant played this turtle role based on the mock turtle in the original story. It was a Hollywood experiment with weird costumes and effects, far from the rom-coms he makes today. This photo is of the rising Hollywood icon Grace Kelly in 1953. She represented Hollywood glamour at its most elegant and timeless. A couple of years after this shot, she won an Oscar for The Country Girl and married Prince Rainier of Monaco and was soon Princess Grace. This is a 1942 breakfast ration for the U.S. That meal pack contains chopped ham and eggs, crackers, instant Nescafé coffee, Dentyne chewing gum, a chocolate bar, and Chesterfield cigarettes. These rations were developed for quick, calorie-dense meals for soldiers in combat when hot meals were not an option. A typical scene at an East German disco club, 1976. The young crowd in classic 70s flares and bright tops found freedom in music and dance, one of the few forms of self-expression in socialist East Germany. The clubs provided some exposure to Western culture, even under the regime. A woman watches a Sony TV 8301, one of the first portable TVs, introduced in Japan in 1960. This TV was revolutionary for its time, small enough to take on the go or watch in the car. When television was still popular in the 1960s, outside viewing seemed almost futuristic. Sony TV 8301 showed the world that TV need not be stationary. It can be mobile. This is a 1929 General Electric monitor top refrigerator. It was the first large-scale electric refrigerator sold to ordinary consumers. The monitor-like top, named for its shape, contains the compressor unit, which resembles the turret of a Civil War-era monitor ship. This appliance changed households and people could store food much longer. A 1904 photo of Daytona Beach in Florida. Some were at the shore for a sunny day wearing long dresses and suits typical of the beach attire of the time, and umbrellas for shade. Carriages were still mainly horse-drawn and cars were rare. This photo shows airline reservations before computers in 1945. A woman looks across a massive board displaying flight details, cities, and booking numbers. These boards were updated manually for seats and flight times. Employees moved markers and wrote information by hand. It was a laborious process that required attention to detail and teamwork. A young couple in Oregon in the 1940s prepares to hit the road, the American dream. They pose in front of a classic car, a symbol of freedom and a better life popular in the post-war era. An Atlas Tires billboard behind them says, "They go on," indicating hope for a long journey ahead. Still from the 1967 Japanese novel Captain Ultra. Rarely is there a photo of Marilyn Monroe in a new dress. Guess who is in this photo, ladies and gentlemen? Write the answer in the comments. The iconic 1992 photo of Muhammad Ali and Michael Jordan. Both are pictured wearing Chicago Bulls gear, which symbolically ties them together despite representing different sports. A moment that exemplifies the greatness of two of the 20th century's greatest athletes, Ali the greatest boxer of all time, and Jordan the basketball legend. A young Princess Elizabeth, later Queen Elizabeth II, poses in this 1945 photo of World War II. This is her uniform from the Auxiliary Territorial Service, ATS, as a junior subaltern. The Princess Elizabeth trained as a mechanic and military truck driver for the ATS and stood behind her country and supported the British people during tough times. An office worker waters lilies by a window in the RCA building, now 30 Rockefeller Plaza, in New York City in this atmospheric 1955 photo. Their silhouettes are against the Manhattan skyline with the Empire State Building in the distance. A man rides on a four-wheeled cycle carriage, 1850. This kind of early vehicle was called a quadricycle or pedal carriage and was an early attempt to replace horse-drawn carriages and walking. These cycles were popular in Europe and America for those wanting to travel without a horse and were powered by pedals. Ford model on lubrication rack at Lubicil Service Garage in 1930. Workers inspect and lubricate the car with a specialized lift and piping system for oil distribution. Service stations like Lubicil became important to American car culture culture as automobiles became more popular. A 1940 photo by Jack Delano shows a Pennsylvania home. The worn shutters and peeled paint on the facade hint at the age of the house. Children sitting on the steps give the scene life against the almost melancholic home. Thick smoke over residential rooftops and factory chimneys in this 1950s photo from Leicester, England. Coal was then the main fuel, and scenes like this were common in industrial towns throughout the UK. The smoke from home stoves and factory boilers was very polluted air, and smog became part of everyday life. Italian actress Gianna Maria Canal, 1950 star, is pictured here. Famous for her exotic beauty, Canal acted in historical and adventure films popular in Italy of the time. She demonstrates the intense look and sophisticated pose of that era with a cigarette in hand. A 1950s photo of a classic American service station, where motorists could get gas and get window washing, oil checking, and tire inflation. Those stations were truly service stations, the kind of personalized attention you get now at most self-service pumps. A trolley is seen on Steinway Street and 19th Avenue in Queens, New York in the 1930s. The trolley cost only 6 cents to ride and was popular with city dwellers then. Men and women in 1930s attire wait to board. One bookmobile served villages and suburbs without libraries. See photo. Such portable libraries proved popular by the beginning of the 20th century, especially in rural areas where book access was limited. Bookmobiles let people borrow books in their neighborhoods, providing education and literature to the most remote areas. An unusual 1937 photo of the offices of the Central Social Institution in Prague. Hundreds of document drawers line a wall and special lift cabins for workers. In this way, employees could go up or down easily and access a massive archive of data relevant to managing social services. A soapbox race at Zandvoort, Netherlands, August 12, 1950. Soapbox cars were popular in the mid-20th century among kids and teens racing simple, motorless vehicles made of wood, metal, and whatever else they could find. This historical 1915 photograph was taken by A.O. Erickson. Lumberjacks working among redwoods in California. The tree is enormous. Workers on wooden platforms with huge saws look tiny next to the giant redwood. They are among the tallest and oldest trees on Earth and were dangerous to log. This 1931 photograph is of downtown Los Angeles at nighttime from La City Hall. Soft lighting and long exposure lend the image an atmospheric quality. It shows Los Angeles in the early 20th century. The city's bright street lights and skyscrapers signify its economic rise after the Great Depression. Engines are removed from mothballed planes at Kingman Air Force Base in Arizona in a 1947 photo. Many bombers and other military aircraft were stored after World War II because demand for them dropped dramatically. Some engines and other parts were dismantled for recycling or disposal at Kingman Air Force Base, and the planes themselves were scrapped or sold for metal. Actresses Diane Keaton and Al Pacino relax on the set of The Godfather in this 1972 photo. In this behind-the-scenes shot, Al Pacino plays a serious, cold man named Michael Corleone. With a wide smile and playful expression, Pacino is light and happy compared to the intense atmosphere of the film. 1951 photo shows sightseers looking out from the windows of the Statue of Liberty's crown onto New York City. This angle shows how huge the statue is and how close visitors could feel its symbolic weight. A trip to the Statue of Liberty and a climb to its crown were popular tourist attractions at the time, representing freedom and the American dream that many generations of immigrants had sought upon arriving in the United States. This 1983 photo shows actress Susan Sarandon relaxing with musician David Bowie. Taken around the time they starred in The Hunger, a cult vampire thriller, this shot has the vibe of an era when both Bowie and Sarandon were at their best and iconic. Three young women pose for pictures in a photo booth, 1950s craze. In this 1954 photo, you could get 4 poses in a couple of minutes for just 25 cents, an attractive option for capturing spontaneous and fun moments. They are adjusting hair and outfits, an important detail even for informal photos. 1960 photo of actress Natalie Wood by her Los Angeles pool. She sits in a swimsuit next to her fluffy pet in a small bowl. This photo is of Hollywood during the silent era, when movie stars could own their own homes. Featured in this early 1950s photo is actress Peggy Castle, known for her sharp looks and roles in westerns and film noir, standing on a fireman's pole. This was probably shot on set or in a photo shoot and captured the jovial, childlike spirit of the era. She smiles happily and poses naturally. It is a classic Hollywood photo from the 50s. This 1954 photo of a man holding onto a young tree during a storm is taken by Stanley Hall. The winds whip up branches and whip up waves that crash onto the shoreline, and the boardwalk is covered with debris. That the man can grab the tree and fight the storm shows how powerful nature is and how vulnerable humans are to such power. Image 1 of 16, the Hughes H4 Hercules, nicknamed the Spruce Goose, is an engineering marvel marvel and the world's largest aircraft by wingspan. This enormous flying boat was built in 1947 by eccentric billionaire and aviation pioneer Howard Hughes. As a transatlantic flight transport during World War II, it was designed to transport troops and supplies without being threatened by German submarines. This 1942 shot from behind the scenes shows Humphrey Bogart with actress Ingrid Bergman on the set of Casablanca, one of Hollywood's most famous films. The movie sets during World War II and stars Bogart as Rick Blaine and Bergman as Ilsa Lund in a love triangle amid war-torn Europe. This photograph, taken November 16, 1963, shows President John F. Kennedy with NASA Director Dr. Wernher von Braun at Cape Canaveral, Florida. Day after his assassination, Kennedy visited NASA facilities, signaling his support for the space race and America's plan to have a man on the moon by the end of this decade. A classic 1960s photograph of an office worker organizing files in a large metal card catalog, typical of pre-digital filing systems. She is in mid-century office professional attire, heels, and a fitted skirt. Photograph from 1968 showing young Arnold Schwarzenegger visiting New York City, just off a plane from Austria and just starting his bodybuilding career in America. Arnold is pictured here with a camera to document the city he had always wanted. This historic image shows gentlemen around a Pluto lamp, an early model of public lighting at the 1897 Great Exhibition. There were lamps developed during a rapid period of industrial innovation, which would revolutionize urban lighting as a replacement for gas lamps. A solemn 1902 photo of Emperor Nicholas II of Russia riding the imperial train. Framed by the train window, Nicholas II's intense gaze and measured posture suggest the weight of his post as last emperor of the Russian Empire. He is in formal military attire, a symbol of the power and challenges of his rule that would end in revolution and the fall of the Romanov dynasty. He is above a Russian imperial double-headed eagle emblem, which recalls a time when the Russian Empire was strong and changing rapidly. Another classic image of Bruce Lee dancing. Before becoming an icon in martial arts in Hollywood, Lee was a Hong Kong cha-cha dance champion whose smooth footwork showed through in his fighting. This rare glimpse at Lee reveals his charm, charisma, and less-known talent for dancing, proving he was just as rhythmic and flow master of the dance floor as in the dojo. Rare photo, the ultimate rebel James Dean gets his mustache all done at a New York barbershop in 1955. Like everything else he did, Dean made a standard haircut look sexy. He was a laid-back, brooding type who elevated the just-got-out-of-bed look. Imagine how this small detail encapsulates his easygoing yet serious look. Pure 50s Hollywood cool. Throwback to 1968, the spirit of Jacksonville's bold new city of the South rebranding. This photo was taken as Jacksonville celebrated city-county consolidation, combining city and county governments to form one community and spur growth. Both the slogan and this lighthearted photo shoot promoted Jacksonville as the future-oriented city of the South. The excitement shows the city hopes to become a new engine of progress and development in the region. One early switchboard operator from the 1880s holds her telephone in a head-mounted holder with free hands. Before computers, switchboard operators manually connected calls by plugging lines into a switchboard. The headset in this image was meant to ease the physical strain of holding the phone for long. It weighed about 6 pounds. It's a look at early telecommunications, when each call required physical effort and special equipment. In this 1941 photograph, we see Hollywood icon Barbara Stanwyck in action in dramas and film noirs. She oozes the poised elegance that made her a leading lady of her era. Stanwyck played leading parts in such classics as Double Indemnity and Stella Dallas, and was one of the most versatile actresses of her time. Her style here, soft waves, a fitted white dress, and an inviting yet assertive expression, reflects her reputation as a Hollywood powerhouse who married femininity with strength on screen. See how the 1966 Batman TV series starred Adam West as Batman and Burt Ward as Robin was made. The show was campy, light-hearted, and heavily comic book influenced with comic book theatrics and big stunts, like this wall-climbing setup. The dynamic duo would scale buildings defying gravity while demonstrating low-tech practical effects of the era. This series defined the Caped Crusader for pop culture. The 1920s were a glamorous time in Hollywood's golden age, and this portrait is of actress Nancy Carroll. Carroll had big blue eyes and a big smile. She was one of the early silver screen stars. With her curly bob and pearls, she was flapper chick. Initially, she made silent films, then made successful talkies, winning audiences with her charm and talent. Her career flourished during this period, and she remains a classic of early American film. It was a 1950s gadget by Philips, the in-car record player. Imagine cruising down the highway spinning your 45s. This was luxury. This in-dash accessory was a daring innovation at the time, although bumpy roads made playback a little rough. Not necessarily practical, but cool enough to represent the era's fascination with high-tech advances in personalized entertainment. New York City, 1934. Serious blizzard wrecks traffic along Madison Avenue. Streetcars, cars, and pedestrians struggle through the snow as the city pushes on despite the frozen chaos. See the quiet determination in this shot. Winter storms were another obstacle to the whirlwind lifestyle of New Yorkers. Until snowplows and high-tech road salt arrived, it was all about grit, worn coats, and a steady pace in the snow. In 1974, French tightrope artist Philippe Petit did the unthinkable. He did the unthinkable. He walked on a high wire between the Twin Towers at the World Trade Center in New York City. Petit and his crew committed the artistic crime of the century by snagging into the towers, running a cable across, and early one morning he took his first steps 1,350 feet above the ground without a safety net. He crossed 8 times and even lay down on the wire twice in 45 minutes. This was a daring act, chasing dreams and turning the city skyline into his stage. This image is of an early microwave oven. In 1954, the first commercial microwave was a huge machine designed for restaurants and not homes, introduced by Raytheon. It was expensive and big, 1600 watts, and intended for commercial kitchens. Then came the 1967 model, offered by Anana, a Raytheon division, and finally, families could cook quickly at home, an era of convenience that gave birth to the modern kitchens. Hollywood bombshell Jayne Mansfield dances the twist with a young Marine at the U.S. Naval Station in Newfoundland in 1961. Mansfield performed regularly at USO shows for American servicemen overseas. Her energy and charisma made her a favorite among the troops, and such moments were a respite from the routine and grind of military life. The photo not only captures a dance but a slice of American pop culture and military history. In the 1940s, bizarre and sometimes weird beauty gadgets were in style, like this Reductomatic portable sweatbox. The device promised a quick fix for losing pounds, sweating out excess weight. Users would zip into this insulated suit hooked up to a heat-generating machine for a sauna effect. It was not the most comfortable way, but the sweat-inducing device was emblematic of the era's obsession with quick-fix slimming products long before fitness and wellness trends of today. In 1910, a motorcycle like this Bradbury represented modernity and independence. Bradbury motorcycles produced by British company Bradbury 1 and 1 Co. were among the best bikes of the early 20th century. The toughness and engineering quality of Bradbury motorcycles attracted early enthusiasts who wanted a solid but adventurous mode of transport. This photo of a dapper gentleman posing with his bike recalls a time when motorcycles were new toys on the streets of Europe. A classic 1960s image shows women grocery shopping with their curlers still in their hair, a scene from mid-century American suburbia. That meant women would often run errands with their hair curled for later events. The floral dresses, practical eyeglasses, and slow pace of stocking the pantry recall a time when grocery shopping was as much a social event as it was a household chore. The supermarket shelves behind them, stacked with iconic brands and brightly colored packaging, lend the image vintage charm. A 1950s vision of futuristic luxury includes an air-conditioned lawn mower with bubble dome and spacious seating. This notion of mowing your lawn in style away from heat and bugs was new and representative of an era all about innovation and modern conveniences. The whimsical, almost sci-fi design of the mower and the casual attitude of the people in the image lend it a Jetsons vibe, mid-century technology with a dash of leisure. Such a gadget is one of those retro gadgets that remind us just how future-focused the 1950s were, always looking for ways to make the most mundane jobs a little more glamorous. An image from 1950s American pop culture, the Miss Atomic Bomb pageant. This era saw atomic culture flourish, especially in Nevada where atomic testing was frequently done. A funny but eerie mushroom cloud headpiece worn by the pageant winner represents both the glamorization of nuclear energy and the atomic bomb's impact on society at the time. A wacky portrait of atomic power reflects the fascination and fear that defined the atomic age. A lector reads a newspaper to cigar factory workers, 1900s. Commuters, London, 1952. Photographer Bert Hardy. For a £21,000 bet, Harry Bensley took on the challenge to walk around the world in the helmet from a suit of armor for the largest ever recorded bet on record that became known as The Man in the Iron Mask, 1908. Buzz Aldrin, first self-portrait in space, 1966. Modern rural kitchen, USA, 1930s. Plink test, 1949 by Betty Cook, Stanford Research Labs.